gentlemen, and I give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, господин председатель.
I would like to also thank the head of the verification mission in Colombia. Thank to Mr. Carlos Ruiz-Amacio for the report describing the situation in the country. We welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia, Ms. Bloom. The document we have unfortunately confirms the view that there is insufficient progress in implementing the key provisions of the final peace agreement. The agreement which the verification mission is to oversee according to the Security Council mandate. And this gives us growing concern, especially given that the new electoral cycle is approaching. I'd like to recall that the final agreement, which put an end to half a century of an internal armed conflict, was widely supported internationally, and precisely because it was the outcome of a complicated direct dialogue and specific agreements arrived at by Colombian parties. And the UN mission is tasked with overseeing that. The implementation. This historic document should not be viewed as a unilateral declaration of intent. It means, therefore, that its implementation has to be accompanied by continuous dialogue by the signatories parties. And in this regard, I would like to welcome the meeting on the 10th of March between the President Duque and the leader of the Communist Party, Londoño, and the decision to extend the mandate of the Trilateral Commission on Follow-up Promotion and Verification of the Final Agreement, the CSIVI Commission. We call upon the Colombian parties to continue their regular contacts at all levels to ensure that there is full transparency as far as their steps are concerned, and also to make sure that they're all in line with the spirit and the letter of the final agreement. Unilateral steps not agreed between parties is not something that can move the process forward. And this applies to the entire list of the 5 priority areas of work outlined by the Secretary General. They cover basically all of the aspects of the settlement. We agree with the report where it says that in the 5 priority areas, there's been insufficient progress. We expect that Bogota will make additional efforts so as to rectify the situation as they implement their commitments under the final agreement. The most acute issue is ensuring the security of civilians, and this includes the participants in the peace process, members of their family, and representatives of civil society. We note with regret that not only do killings continue, there is lack of progress in investigating them. There is also a worsening crime situation in those areas where heretofore there had been an improvement. Security threats are so high that, according to the report, only in January, February of this year, they resulted in 13.5 thousand internally displaced people. And this is the same number as the number of the registered participants in the peace process. Members of the Council received information regularly about the government implementing programs which are not provided for in the peace agreement. And at the same time, progress in implementing that which the final agreement contains is something that's proceeding at a slow pace. And this refers to the comprehensive land reform, land distribution, voluntary drug substitution, and the National Reintegration Council, etc. It is our view that the #1 goal for the government and the Colombian society as a whole should be implementing the provisions of the final agreement themselves. Without that, the prospects for lasting peace in Colombia will continue being pushed back. Now, let me move on to the report itself and the work as conducted by the verification mission. It is well known that because of the security issues which remain outstanding, people are taking up arms again. We therefore think it's important to make sure that the report reflects the number of the so-called dissidents. These figures could be an indicator of how effective the peace process is. We are once again perplexed when we saw that the report talks about the challenges encountered by the LGBT community. We're not clear how this is related to the peace process or to the overcoming the consequences of the internal armed conflict. We think that would be much more useful for the Council to know, for example, what the situation is as far as social security is concerned, ensuring the safety for families with children, those families where the breadwinner was killed in a conflict or an attack. Such single-parent families are, we know, a particularly vulnerable group in any conflict situation. Furthermore, we think that there isn't sufficient information about overcoming difficulties between the government and the National Liberation Army when it comes to resuming a direct dialogue without preconditions. Lasting peace in Colombia is not possible unless all key actors participate. As regards expanding the mandate of the mission to also oversee the implementation of individual decisions of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, well, we took note of the information that we have in the Secretary General's letter dated 25th February. The Council also has discussed this issue on several occasions. Our view is that the general understanding that this step is needed is already there, all the more so since we have a direct request from the Colombians. Mr. President, in conclusion, I have to state that the Secretary General's report confirms the view that it's premature to call the peace process in Colombia irreversible. The peace that exists in the country is very fragile, and the number of factors which negatively impact the prospects for the peace process are, unfortunately, their number is only growing. And that is why the efforts made by the Secretary General, Security Council, state guarantors of the peace process in Colombia are aimed at helping with the consistent implementation of the peace building goals which are contained in the final agreement. The support for this historic agreement by the international community is a credit of trust issued to Colombians, and it is issued with the expectations that the provisions of the final document are going to be strictly and unfailingly implemented. Russia, as a permanent Security Council member, stands ready to continue supporting the Colombian peace process in order to make it a lasting and irreversible one. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for his statement.